I used to think that the only way to succeed was to outwork everyone. But after reading this book, Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, I realized that this hustle mindset might actually be the thing that's pulling us away from our goals. So in this video, I'm going to distill some of my favorite insights from this book and showing you some simple places we can all use them in our own lives. Let's go. In a lot of cases, hustle is just a short-term game dressed up as a long-term strategy. You output lots of stuff, but you get burnt out super fast. You're managing your energy like an amateur. On the contrast, slow productivity leads to better breakthroughs. You don't context switch all the time. And it really treats focus, intention, and clarity as real levers of success, which is how they should be treated. So with that out of the way, let's go on to the first principle of slow productivity, which is to do fewer things. In this book, Cal Newport refers to a thing called overhead. And this is basically all the little tasks and managerial things that happen outside of the main task you're doing that adds time onto the project. Think about things like the Slack threads, meetings, emails, and constant catch-up that you have to do with people you're working with, which means that the more tasks and projects you have, the more overhead there's going to be, and the less time you'll actually be able to spend getting real work done. So here I'm going to cite a thing called the Pareto principle, which is basically that 80% of the results you get come from 20% of your actions, which means that basically most of the stuff that you're doing is not the stuff that's going to move the needle. So what he recommends in the book is to limit yourself to a maximum of 3 projects at a time. And this may seem like a super small number, but actually paradoxically, it makes you much more productive and moves you a lot closer to your goals. When you're forced to take a wider range of things you could do and handpick 3 of them, it makes you a lot more aware of how you're spending your time and forces you to choose the stuff that's actually going to move that needle. So when you limit yourself down to 3 projects, you'll naturally have less tasks, you'll naturally have less overhead, and you'll be able to spend more time doing the work that's actually valuable. And with that, we move on to the second principle, which is to work at a natural pace. I mentioned before that the roots of hustle culture are in the industrial era, and that worked really well back then. But now in the era of more knowledge-based work, we have to treat ourselves less like robots and the humans that we are, with brains that fundamentally don't have that much capacity. So what this principle is where you work at a pace that kind of matches the natural ebbs and flows of your mind. In the book, he says that most meaningful and creative work doesn't happen at a steady pace. You'll have a couple days or weeks where you might want to sprint when you're working really hard on a project, and then other days where you work, prepare, or rest. In the long run, this variability leads to much better, more creative outputs because you're working how your brain was designed to work. And it builds creative longevity, protects your enthusiasm for the work, and your grind isn't killing the enjoyment you had before. Your mind is also given more space to wander and work completely stress-free. As you might imagine, this makes your mind work a lot better and you are hence a lot more productive. 365 days a year of uniform grind is not healthy for our minds because that's simply not how we evolved. Since we can't really fight our biology, isn't it a better idea to kind of work with it instead? And we will now move on to principle 3, which is how you take this natural brain rhythm and productivity you'll be experiencing and converting it into really life-changing work. In the days of shorter attention spans and tons of technology, high-quality work is rare. You'll have AI-written blog posts, 30-second TikTok brain rot, and hustle bros churning content daily. Because of this big cultural change, and especially with online and knowledge work, Cal Newport suggests to obsess over quality because high quality compounds. It gets noticed more, it gets referenced again and again, and you get a much better return on your time investment. And this is honestly deeply motivating. A single incredibly made YouTube video will outperform the last 10 ones that are churned out with low effort. One brilliant email can lead you to keeping a client for 2 years. Quality scales, but quantity usually doesn't. And to implement this, Cal Newport suggests that we should implement a 4-step system when completing any task. To draft and refine. 2, to complete fewer stuff, which is kind of linking back to principle 1. 3, to respect our natural rhythms. And 4, to seek feedback wherever you can. And when you seriously begin to implement these tactics, it's actually crazy how productive you become and how much that initial spark really returns to your work when it's not just about hustle and output, but rather outputting stuff that you're proud of. And if you still struggle with clearing your mind and productivity feels like wading through mud, I made this video right here to share the science-backed strategy to fix just that.